In October of 1989, 30-year-old Carol Stuart was looking forward to the birth of her first child, but that wouldn't happen because on October 23rd, Carol was shot in the head and died hours later. Hi, I'm Denise from Fascinating Cases. I remember this case so well when I first heard of it. It was so tragic and shocking and racially charged. So let's get into the case of Charles and Carol Stuart. Charles Stuart was born in 1959 into a large Catholic family on the outskirts of Boston. The family carved out a modest living, and Charles was ambitious. He wanted to be wealthy and respected, but he was making some really poor life choices. He claimed he went to Brown University and played football there. Both were lies. He would tell these lies while working as a cook at a seafood restaurant in 1978. In this is where he met a sweet, charming waitress named Carol. Charles finally got the nerve to ask Carol out. And the two were soon dating seriously, even though Carol's father didn't think much of Charles. He thought Charles seemed cunning and sly. Carol was finishing college and planned to go to law school. Charles got a job in a fur shop, first as a salesman and then as a manager, and he started making good money. People thought they made an odd couple. Carol was outgoing and warm, while Charles was reserved and pretentious. In October of 1985, the couple married, and Carol got a good job as a tax advisor. The future was looking bright. The couple settled in Boston. They traveled a lot and seemed to put a lot of effort into their marriage. But Charles was always concerned with how they could make more money. He even encouraged Carol to take a higher paying job. They bought a big house in the suburbs of Reading, Massachusetts, about 16 miles from Boston. It was sprawling with a pool. Charles loved to cook and wanted to open a restaurant. But he was always commenting on Carol's weight too often. And when she brought up the idea of having a baby, Charles would say it was too soon and they needed more money. A friend of Charles said later, Charles didn't even want children really at all. It was as if his feelings for Carol were diminishing. Some people at his work didn't even know he was married. And he became infatuated with a coworker named Debbie, who was only 21 years old. He told a friend someday he would take her out on a date. But in 1989, an overjoyed Carol announced that she was pregnant. Charles suggested an abortion, but Carol was not having it. She wanted that baby so much. Charles was so upset that he would even give Carol the silent treatment for days. Here, Carol was so happy, and Charles was becoming distant and cold. He went out with friends more often, drinking the nights away. Charles was also still infatuated and flirting with his young coworker, Debbie. He started talking very negatively about Carol, and more openly, too. But Charles was playing along. He reluctantly helped Carol buy baby items and even went to prenatal classes with her. And it was October 23rd that they went to one of these classes at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. On the way home, Charles took a different way home than he usually did. Instead of a more direct route home to Reading from the hospital, he took a road that would lead them to the predominantly black neighborhood of Mission Hill. And while robberies occurred there, nothing of big magnitude had been reported. But on this day, October 23rd, around 11 p.m., Charles called 911.
Police Boston reported an emergency 510.
My wife's been shot. I've been shot.
Where is this, sir?
I have no idea. I'm off. I've been coming from Tremont, Brigham and Women's Hospital.
According to Charles, while they were in the Mission Hills neighborhood, a man came up to his car at a stoplight with a gun. He demanded the couple's money and jewelry, and he made them drive to a more abandoned area. And then he shot Carol in the head, and he shot Charles in the stomach. Charles attempted to tell police on 911 where his location was, but he struggled to tell them what street he was on for a very long time.
Bear with me, Chuck. I'm going to get someone to you. Hang in with me now.
All right. I'm at a place. I can't read it.
Just try to read it, Chuck.
I'm coming up to a... Yeah.
Okay, Chuck, so try to give me a street sign. Okay, Chuck. Is your wife breathing?
I just feel it gurgling. There's a busy street up ahead. Oh, man. I'm turning onto a busy street. I recognize where I am now. Should I drive to the hospital?
Just tell me what the street is, Chuck.
I'm pulling over. Tremont Street.
Tremont Street?
Police finally arrived on the scene, and they were accompanied by a TV crew for the TV show Rescue 911. The crew happened to be doing a ride-along with some police officers on that night, and they got a lot of footage of the police and the ambulances and the medics removing Carol and Charles from the vehicle. They were put in ambulances, and Carol was barely clinging to life. She had been shot 3 times in the head. The trauma also forced her into early labor, and she delivered baby Christopher 2 months prematurely. Carol died hours later, and Christopher died 2 weeks later. Charles was also hurting. He suffered a serious abdominal wound and endured 2 surgeries, but he lived. Police were looking hard for the assailants, and here's where this case divided a city and a nation. Charles said it was a black man wearing a black jogging suit with red stripes, and he had a raspy voice. The residents of Boston were outraged, and they demanded justice for this beautiful, innocent couple. Police scoured the nearby neighborhoods for a suspect matching Charles's description. They used a controversial method of stop and frisk. Many black men in the neighborhood around Mission Hill were stopped and frisked. The law was in place already, but after the shooting of the Stuarts, the use of stop and frisk skyrocketed. Supposedly, 150 black men were stopped and frisked every day, and some were strip searched. It was demeaning, to say the least.
I understand that as a result of this, you have a 20-year-old son, and you basically had to change the way you live in this community, the way you operate as a resident of this community.
Yes, I did. I would constantly get into arguments with my son because I was telling him how to dress. I told him he better not wear his black jogging pants for a month. I wouldn't let him wear his baseball cap, and every day when he was leaving the house, I said, "Do you have your ID?" And he said, "Yeah, I have it." I said, "No, I want to see it," because I felt that at any point he could be stopped, he could be harassed.
Police took a close look at 39-year-old William Bennett. He was known to police, and he had a record. During a police lineup, Charles said he recognized Bennett as his wife's killer. He recognized his ear and jawline and was certain this was the man. Bennett was arrested, but denied involvement in the crime. The case was now getting widespread media attention. Charles, meanwhile, was busy cashing in Carol's $250,000 life insurance policy, and he went shopping for a new car, a watch, and gold jewelry. Women's jewelry. I wonder who that was for. So Charles was moving on happily, and Willie Bennett would likely have been convicted for this crime, except for a twist in the case. It was a guilty conscience. On January 3rd, 1990, just 2 months after the shooting, the police got a visit from 23-year-old Matthew Stuart, the younger brother of Charles Stuart. Matthew said on the night of the shooting, he arranged with Charles a plan to pick up a bag of Carol's things, her purse, her jewelry. Matthew supposedly thought he was just helping Charles commit insurance fraud. Matthew said he arranged to meet Charles in the Mission Hill neighborhood on the night of the shooting. Matthew pulled up to Charles' car and was tossed a bag with Carol's things in them. He said he had no idea. Carol lay dying, slumped over in the passenger seat. And when he opened the bag of items, he wasn't expecting to see a gun. But he dumped the bag into the Pines River, and the items were eventually recovered. Was Matthew telling the truth? Matthew said it was Charles that shot and killed his wife and shot himself because Charles didn't want a baby. All he wanted was money, and maybe Carol would want to stay home with the baby instead of working. And Charles didn't want a divorce either because that would mean splitting assets and child support. Matthew said he came forward when he realized an innocent man, Willie Bennett, would take the blame for the crime and probably go to jail forever. Willie Bennett was innocent. Matthew told Charles what he planned to do. He was going to come clean. And the next day, Charles Stuart was found dead in the Mystic River with a note saying he couldn't face the charges. Matthew Stuart was prosecuted for his part in the crime. He was charged with obstruction of justice and insurance fraud. In 1992, he pled guilty and served 3 years. Prosecutors say the only reason he came forward is because other family members of Charles Stuart were threatening to do it, because many people at this point knew Charles was the one who shot his wife. Charles Stuart was self-centered and directed by money. His wife and unborn child got in the way, so he devised an ugly plan. He shoot his own wife and himself and blame a black man, turning a city and a nation upside down. He believed falsely that if he blamed a black man, he would get away with this crime of murdering his wife more easy. Carol's family wanted the city to heal, and they set up a scholarship program for Mission Hill residents to go to college. And one of the beneficiaries was Willie Bennett's daughter. Race relations suffered in Boston after this case. A commission was formed to look at police conduct and the stop and frisk law, and the strip searching, and even more. Stop and frisk is still legal in Boston, but there are now more restrictions to avoid abuse. This case is disturbing on so many levels. Matthew Stuart ended up dead in 2011 at a homeless shelter of a drug overdose. He probably couldn't take the weight of what he was involved with. So my thoughts. This case highlighted the dangers of racial stereotyping and bias. Everyone accepted Charles' story, the police, the media, and the public, despite the fact that some detectives and the family of Charles Stuart had suspicions. Charles' story should have been looked at more closely right away. It took a guilty conscience of Matthew Stuart to turn the case around. I wish there would have been a way for Carol Stuart to know whether or not she was marrying a psychopath. What do you think about this case? Let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you. Like and subscribe, and I appreciate you watching, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you.